in this example, now we're going to be a little bit different. Okay, we're going to say something in the economy has changed and we are no longer at full employment equilibrium. Okay, so let's look at this one. Okay, in this case, remember this one is our aggregate demand column. This one is our short run aggregate supply column, and this one is our LAS, our long run aggregate supply column. Okay, so in this case, our equilibrium, our macroeconomic equilibrium in the short run, okay, is going to be, again, where that aggregate demand column is equal to that SAS column, the real GDP supplied in the short run. So in this case, our real GDP is going to be, it's not these, this one doesn't equal, it's not this one, those don't equal. It's right here is where the real GDP demanded is equal to the real GDP supplied in the short run. So the real GDP macroeconomic short run equilibrium is now 11 and at a price level of 110. So let's go ahead and draw that. Okay, so here we're just going to do PL for price level, and here we have real GDP. Okay, so we have our aggregate demand curve, we have our short run aggregate supply curve. So in this case, our equilibrium real GDP, where this column and this column are equal, is going to be 11. Our price level is going to be 110. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to see, this is our real GDP, but what we want to see now is where is that in relation to our potential GDP. Remember, this column, the LAS curve, is our potential GDP, and our potential GDP is 12, where our real GDP is 11. So potential GDP is 12. Okay, so our LAS curve is going to be here. This is our LAS, and this is our potential GDP, in this case 12. Okay, so in this case, potential GDP is greater than real GDP. Okay, potential GDP is greater than real GDP. So in this case, we have something called a recessionary gap. Because potential GDP is greater than real GDP, that's called a recessionary gap. In this case, this shows our recessionary gap. The LAS curve is to the right of our real GDP. Okay? And if we ask you what's the magnitude of the gap, the magnitude of the recessionary gap is going to be the difference between potential and real GDP. So it's going to be 12 minus the 11, which is 1. So the magnitude of our recessionary gap is the difference between the real GDP and potential GDP. If we just looked at this, we could say, okay, here our real GDP is 11, potential is 12, so 12 minus 11 is our magnitude of the recessionary gap. Okay, so it'd be 1.